Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to Ask NK. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Epic Games Unreal Engine Livelink with Blender 2 Unreal Engine. And today we're going to look at two major things. One is like the very basics, how you can move your assets directly from Blender over to Unreal Engine, how you can set things up and create your own wonderful pipeline. Then the second session of this particular video is where we're going to be talking about some technicalities that you need to keep in mind. So if you're thinking about making rigs, you're thinking about using the Rigify section of this tool, then we're going to talk about that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First things first, you need to have Unreal Engine and you also need to have a copy of Blender. You need a GitHub account, and once you're done creating that GitHub account, go over to Epic Games Unreal Engine website. I'm going to put a link in the description. Create an account, hover across your name, go over to the section called Personal, and underneath it, once that page loads, you would also notice that we have a section here called Connection. Once you click on Connection, you need to connect your GitHub account to Unreal Engine. Without this, you're probably not going to be able to see the website, number one, where you have your GitHub, and you're probably not going to be able to use this tool as it stands. So once you have that connected, the next thing which you need to do is download these two files. You need to download the send to Unreal and also download the UE to Rigify. So once you have done these two, you can now fire up both Blender and Unreal Engine. Now, if you simply go ahead and open up Blender, first things which you need to do is to load up those zip files. Click over to Edit, go over to Preference, and once Preference loads up, go over to the section called Add-ons, and within the add-ons, that is where you need to load these things up. Click on Install, select those zip files, and load them up. So once you have both the send to Unreal and also the UE to Rigify loaded up, you can now simply either click right here to save your preference and close. So with this done, what you need to do is just simply click on close, and once you have this closed, the next thing you need to do to actually get your Unreal working is once you fire up your Unreal Engine and there is a project which you're working on, you can simply do this within the settings. What you need to do is simply go over to settings, go right here to where you have plugins, and search for the word script. Now, the reason why you're searching for the word script is because you need to enable both the Python script and also the editor scripting utilities. Now, you need to make sure that these two are turned on. If they are not, you might definitely have issues. All right, so you need to turn on this and also turn on these other one. Now, once you turn on these two, you need to hit on the restart button to restart your entire project. So we're going to restart our Unreal Engine, and once this comes back, we're also going to go through and talk about other modalities and things that you need to keep in mind before you actually start sending things directly from Blender over to Unreal Engine. So with this loaded up, the next thing which you need to do is also go right here where you have your settings, go over to your project settings, simply go within the search section and search for the word remote execution. Now, what this does is enables the remote execution of your Python plugins or your Python scripts that will work. Remember earlier we kind of updated and opened up the Python thingy, and that is the main reason why you're doing that right now. So once you do this, you can simply go over and close this and jump right into Blender, and just like that, you're ready to rumble with this particular stuff. So one thing to keep in mind, the unit scale that you have in Unreal Engine and the unit scale that you have in Blender are two different unit scale. So the unit scale you have right here is about 100 times bigger. So let's simply take a look at what I mean. If I bring Suzanne the monkey right here and hold down Control and tap 3 on the keyboard, we kind of add a subdivision. So with that subdivision, I can simply hit on apply, and automatically you would notice that because we already added the add-ons, we have pipeline. All right, and you will also notice that we also have 3 different collection boxes. Now, what do? What we can do right here is to use the collection boxes to organize our files how we want them to be imported directly into Unreal. So Suzanne would actually go over to mesh, since it's a mesh file, and with that done, we can simply click on pipeline, export, send to Unreal. Now, once you do this, what happens is Unreal Engine fires up the Python script and simply kicks Susan directly from here and brings her directly into Unreal. And once this comes directly into Unreal, you will notice that we have a brand new folder right here known as Untitled Category. So I'm just simply going to double click there. You also notice that we have Untitled Assets. Also double click right there, click, drag, and drop directly within the viewport, and we'll be able to see Suzanne in all of her glory. Now, one thing to also keep in mind is we never gave Suzanne a texture, and that is why she's looking this way. So with this right here, we can easily navigate across this particular model, and you can see what it looks like, and you can definitely tell that this model is extremely huge. Now the reason why this model is huge is because directly here in Blender we did not position our scaling system, or we did not define our scaling units to match what we have in Unreal. So how can you do that? How you can do that is simple. Go right here where you have your scene properties, and directly underneath where you have units, you need to set the unit scale to a 100 of the default Blender unit scale. What I mean is you need to dial this to 0.001, something like that, so you can get this right here. So with this now, you can choose to save your scene scale or your unit scale so that you don't have to redo this all the time by going over to File, Default, and save these as your default. Or you can go over right here where you have your edit, go over to preference, and with your preference loaded up, just simply look for the send to Unreal and make sure you have always use Unreal scene scale turned on. If this is turned off, it means you have to set this all the time. If this is turned on, you can actually go here and save this as a preference. Now with this done, you don't need to save, or you don't need to change the unit scale all the time. So what do we do now? Let's actually try out something else. Now the reason why we're making this cube is because we want to play with it. I would actually go in here and take out the camera and also the light, because we don't need that. Press M on your keyboard and set this to mesh so that you don't forget. And the next thing which I'm going to do is press the tab key, select one part, maybe select another part, and press I on the keyboard. And of course you can use any of these wonderful tool sets that the guys at Blender Foundation has provided, and you can actually get some pretty stuff working for you. Right now I just want to make something like that, and also maybe push something down like this. So with this right here, if I choose to send these over to Unreal Engine, what will happen is I can consistently make updates to this and also get them applied there. So let's fire up Unreal Engine and see what we have. And with Unreal Engine loaded up, you can notice that we have a folder we have right here. I can simply click and drag this right over within the viewport, and let's give it some time to load. And right there we have this. Another thing that we can do is we can choose to play with the scaling. So you can lock the scale, open the scale, depending on what you want to do. If you lock the scale, you're going to have a uniform scale, or you can simply use the scaling tool right here to do that. So right now I'm just going to lock the scale and set this to 0.1. I guess that's a bit too much, so let's make it 0.5. Yeah, something like that, something very visible. Press F on your keyboard to zoom right in, and then you can hold down Alt outside the mesh and orbit around. If you hold down Alt within the mesh, you're going to make copies, and that is not what we want to do. All right, so hold down Alt outside the mesh and you can orbit across this particular thing. So now that we have done this, if we jump back into Blender and we simply press the tab key and select one particular part, press I on the keyboard to insert a face, use the previous tool that we have, which is the extrude manifold. All right, then make some changes like that. Let's also go in there, press 2 on the keyboard, make some selections, maybe make another selection like there, press Control B and add a couple of bevels, something like this. If we have this selected and we hit send to Unreal one more time, what will happen is directly in Unreal Engine we're going to have that quick update. Something else that is very interesting that you can also do is this applies to both materials and also to the meshes that you have. So it doesn't matter the kind of mesh you have, which is live on your viewport. Once you have an update directly here in Blender, that update will carry through. So now that we've seen how that is a wonderful workflow for everyone, let's see how we can animate stuff. So animating things is very easy, and I think everyone would definitely want to get this one going. So let's just pretend that this object right here is an object we want to animate, or maybe a prop. So what we can do is we can hold down Shift and A and go over to Amateur and click on Single Boom. We're going to talk about how you can play with these ones very soon, and once we do that, you would notice our Amateur is way smaller than what we have here as the cube. So to actually match the scale, what we can do now is to select this particular object and go all the way to where we have object properties and match up the scale, and I'm going to do 0.01 just like we did previously, 0.01, 0.01. Now why I'm doing all of this is just in case you find yourself in a situation like that, you wouldn't have problems. So the next thing to do is press the period key and you find that will balance the scales out. First things to do, don't forget to make sure you have your armature loaded up here within the rig, and then you have this as the mesh. So with this done, you can select the cube, select the armature itself, hit Ctrl and P on the keyboard, and then go over down to where you have armature deformation and make sure it is with automatic weighting. Now once you do that, you would be able to now control this within the pose mode, or should I say you can now pose this particular object by simply using that armature. So now we have one thing done. Animating this is even way simple because we can just simply click on automatic keyframe, hit I on the keyboard, and you can choose to keyframe your location, rotation, or scale, or you can choose to keyframe all of them at the same time. So let's do that, and then I'm going to go over to 40 and just simply do one more time, and of course I'll go over to 20 and move this all the way up. Now if I move this all the way up, let's maybe move it about a point like that. I would also want to rotate this, and because we have our auto keyframe turned on, once we press the back button and press the playback, we're going to have these animation happening. All right, so getting this to Unreal Engine is even way simple because at this point we can just simply jump back from our pose mode over to our object mode, go to pipeline, go to export, and send this over to Unreal Engine. The chances that you're going to have this error, or probably you have had this error, is definitely there. Now the reason why you're having this error, when you first sent this file over to Unreal Engine, it came as a single looking mesh. So for you to now get this out, all you need to do is to go all the way back, delete this untitled category, just simply delete it, and then you can go ahead and reload this there. If you want to have a mesh that you only tweak as you move across, that would be perfect. So just work on the mesh. If that mesh would be animated, you need to make sure you have defined the armature before sending the mesh over to Unreal Engine in the first place. So now that we have this done, we can now simply go over to pipeline, go over to export, and send these over to Unreal. In this way, we will be able to get our file directly here. So if you don't have rig before, you have to delete the folder and bring this back. And once we jump right into the asset, you can now notice that we have the skeleton, we have the physics asset, we have the cube, and then we have the animation. So the animation which we created, which we're going to load right here. And remember, we turned down the scene scale. So I'm just going to fire this all the way up to 50. So we can actually see something. All right, so we're just going to fire this all the way up to 50 and position this right here. Now if we press the playback button, you would notice that we have our animation happening. We can go all the way back and see what's going on, and that looks cool. Doesn't look bad at all. I can press escape key just to jump out, and let's make this about 35 looks good. I'm also going to go ahead and press the playback button, press S just to zoom all the way back, and you have your animation directly from Blender right here in Unreal Engine. Textures is also something else that applies with this. So if you're thinking about textures, you can also jump right here in Blender and make sure that you have those textures done. You can easily define by going over right here, define the material type that you want. Right now I'm just simply going to set this one to red, and let's send this back to Unreal Engine and see what we have. So if we move these or ship this back to Unreal Engine and simply double click, you would also notice that we don't have this. Now the reason why we are not having that is initially when we sent this content out, we did not send the content with a texture, or we didn't send this content out with a material. So you also need to define your material, define the things that you want, the basic things of life before you ship this. So now that we have all of these things, let's select them, go over to pipeline, export, send to Unreal Engine, and right now you will be able to have all of this in their glory right here in Unreal. Like right now you can see that we have the material. As it quietly loads, we can also go in here and load in our our animation. So let's throw that animation right in there, and I'm also going to set this to 35. So with this, let's position this where we think it should be and press the playback button. So now you have all of these things working for you. If you want to animate your scene, you can go ahead and animate your scene. If you want to look around your scene, you can also proceed to doing that. So in this way, you have your files coming directly into Unreal looking exactly how you made them for Blender. And this is the core basics for those who, you know, were sticking around for the core basics. These are the core basics. Now let's get into some, you know, technical side of things. Now for the technical side of things, we're going to simply start off with something I believe if you're here for the technical side, you should have an idea about. So what we need to do is jump over to Blender, and what we're going to do is to play with a very simple character, which we're going to simply apply the amateurs to. So real quick, before we talk about how you can apply those amateurs, let me show you guys how you can get that. So for you to get the amateur going, you need to go over to edit, go over to preference, and you need to come right here where you have your add-on and activate Rigify. Now the reason why you're activating Rigify is because that is the tool that you would work with by simply using the Unreal Engine to Rigify, and the Rigify tool itself is a pre-made amateur creator. What I mean by that is, just in case you have no idea about this, if I turn off the Rigify and come right here and hold down Shift and A, you'll notice we only have single bone within the amateur. But if I turn on the Rigify, I can go over to amateur and I can define a basic human, a basic, you know, quadruped. Let's get that. All right, so you can do all of those definition, and you can also define, you know, different kinds of animals, and you can define a full human character. So what we're doing right now is we're going to simply import a very simple stick figure character, and we're going to go through and position these things all the way through. Now the beautiful part about working with Rigify is you don't have to position everything. You just need to position one part of the object, and once you're done, you can go over to amateur and click on symmetry, you know, just make symmetry, and it's going to go through and create symmetry for the other parts of the model. And this is, to me, one of the fastest way of rigging directly here in Blender. All right, so with our rig ready and everything looking cool, let's play back a very tiny head animation that we did. All right, this doesn't look bad. I think, yeah, right, so I think it actually stopped, so I wanted it to stop somewhere about there. Okay, cool. And there was a very tiny error that we didn't actually fix, and that tiny error happened while we were fixing, or while we were working on this. And if you take a look here, you would notice that this and this doesn't match. So I would just see if there's a way we can fix that, and there you go. So it doesn't affect the animation whatsoever. Let's turn off auto key and let's switch back to the pose mode, and you know, of course, you have everything looking fine. So now that you have your animation going, the next thing which you need to do is jump over to your object mode, switch this back, switch this off, and at any point in time, if you don't want to see the mesh, you can always go here and turn this off so that you can see the amateur. And at any point in time you don't want to see the amateur, you can also turn this off. So we need to plot this, which is the amateur. So I'm going to press M on the keyboard and fix this to the rig, and also this other one has to be within the mesh, which it already is at this point. So the next thing which we need to do is just to make sure that we have everything selected, or you know, unselect them, go over to pipeline, go over to export, and send these over to Unreal Engine. So right now we have our untitled category, and directly here you can see we have our default, you know, material, and we have our animation right here. You can choose to drag and drop this animation here, but what we want to do is go over to file. We want to create a brand new level. Now I'm just going to get a default brand new level, so I can drag this bad boy right in there, and you know, press F on the keyboard just to make sure that I can see it. Increase the scale to about 50 so we can get a higher looking mesh. Of course, I can press the playback button and look around, and we would see our character animating. You jump back into Blender and you choose to reanimate this. So let's take a look at that, and let's update the animation of our model. And maybe at a point like this, I would like my character's, you know, hand to go all the way up, and maybe I would like it to swing forward and, you know, all the way down. So let's simply do that, and you know, very funky stuff to do. I'll also go right there and re-update this. So already we have our model working directly in Unreal, and then we have our animation happening there. So what we're trying to do is to find a very fine point to see if you update your animation, if your animation would also update alongside with that. You can see that that animation doesn't update. Instead, what we have here is there is a different animation called the Meta Rig Action 2. So just in case you're wondering if it works, if you want to update that animation, you have to update the animation and get rid of the previous one that you had before. So this is how you can get this one going. Now with this said, we are also going to take a look at something else, because there is a second plugin, and the only plugin we've been talking about ever since is the Send to Unreal, and we haven't talked about the UE for Rigify. And to do this, I'm simply going to get an FBX file which we're going to try out. So first things first, I'm going to clean this up, get a brand new scene, go over to File, import an FBX file. What we have right here is a Ninja. Now this Ninja, I actually went over to Mixamo, downloaded it. You probably might have seen this Ninja from our animation layers video. So this is it. So I'm just going to go ahead and press the playback, and you can see this is an FBX file that simply works, you know, from one point to another. If you go ahead and press the N key on your keyboard and go over to UE to Rigify, you will notice that we have a section called source. So I'm just simply going to click right here and define the armature as the source. Now this works in a very interesting form, and interesting form in the sense that you are sort of retargeting, so you will be able to use the Rigify tool to get a control rig that you can send over to Unreal Engine. So a lot of, you know, videos, or a lot of people have actually talked about the fact that there is no concrete, you know, tutorial about this, and that is the main reason why we're adding this as an additional part of this particular video. So how you can get this going is by going right here to where you have as, you know, create new, because if you use the Unreal mannequin, it's just going to create the mannequin based off the Unreal mannequin template that has been made before. So what we're going to do is just simply click on the template drop down and click on new. So we're creating a brand new mannequin, and we don't want this mannequin to be a rig with facial features. We just want it to be a mannequin with a basic human, you know, setup. And another thing that we need to do is we need to define the name. So since this is a Mixamo file, I'm just simply going to call this Mixamo. All right, and press the enter key and also click on save, and this is going to save this particular template. Now once we do that and save it, you notice nothing happens. If I click on convert, you would notice that we have control rigs, but our animation doesn't even work with it. So how do we fix this? How we can fix this is simple. If you click right here, you'll notice immediately after source we have edit meta rig. Now the edit meta rig is a form that you can use to target things to where you want them to be. By default, symmetry is turned on, so if you select on any joint and press the delete key, you can easily take out the joints. And what you need to do is just to simply click and match individual points to individual joints that you have right here. Like right now we have the shoulder. You can simply carry the shoulder and just match that right there, and the same thing happens, you know, if I want to match several other parts, I'm also going to be able to do the same thing. So real quick, let's run through and do this. So while doing this, you would notice that we kind of missed some joints. The whole idea for retargeting this particular stuff, which I think it is actually what the guys from Unreal Engine are doing with this tool, is for you to be able to have a very good and straightforward looking, you know, control rig that you can use. So once that is done, the next thing you might want to do is switch over to this section called FK to source, because if you save this and you choose to hit the convert button, you would notice that it seems like everything looks to be working perfect, and you know, you press the playback button one more time, nothing happens. So you need to switch this to FK to source. Now switching this to FK to source is where everything actually starts making sense, because at this point you can select the joint which you want, select these other joints that you have right here, hit Alt and 1 on the keyboard and click link selected bones. Now once you do that and you switch over and go over to the control rig like we are doing right now, you would notice that this is now clicked to that point. So if we press the playback button, you would notice that we have our control rig following that. So how do we get to work with this and get it done faster? So what we can do now is let's simply go ahead and revert the entire thing and switch this back to FK to source. And once we do this FK to source, I would also click right here and directly down here and change what we have right over here to bone remapping nodes. Now if I switch that to bone remapping nodes, I would like to make sure that wherever I have that is called left. Now once I'm remapping this, that automatically the right one should also happen. So to get this going, I need to come right here and type the word right, and then for here I'll type the word left. Now once you have this done, the next thing that you would probably want to do, just to make things and make life easy for you, is just to simply match what you had previously. So I'm just simply going to go ahead and do that real quick. So at this point, if we simply get all these things done and press the playback button, you would notice that we've successfully linked a whole lot of other parts. So it's now totally left for you to go link out all the other parts that you want. Like we'll have some missing joints right here, so you can choose to link these things up depending on the hierarchy of what you have. I think for this one we can link this up with the heap, which I think is what it is. Let's link that up there. All right, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and press the playback, and of course you can see that is happening right there. Okay, so if you're done making all of these things that you want, the next thing which you would notice is right here you already have these things all linked up, and because we chose to go through the route of right and left, we have all of these nodes linked up right here. The next thing which you might want to do, if this is good enough for you, is you can also choose to switch over to control. And you might notice that once you switch over to control, press the playback button, this doesn't work. But when you switch over to FK and source and press the playback button, everything seems to work. So at this point, we would need to go over to source to the form, and within the source to the form, this is where we can link the source to the joint so that we can get these things to the form. Now the reason why we're doing this is so once we switch over to control, we'll be able to get control of how we would like to play with the control rig, because contrary to that, you would only be able to control the FK only when you switch to FK to source. So right now we're going to simply take a look at how this can be done, and it is pretty easy based off the fact that we've already taken a very close look to something like that. So the same thing, select one, select these other parts, the corresponding part, and link them up, and you would notice that automatically it's linking because we're going for a T-pose right now. And the same thing occurs right here. I'm also going to select these other one, and link this up as well, and you start noticing that we're having a T-pose model. So once this is done and you're ready, the next thing which you need to do, which is extremely simple to do, is just to hit the save button, and then you can choose to toggle on or toggle off animation override. But in our case, we do have an animation, so we're just simply going to toggle on animation override and click on convert. Now once we do this, what would happen is the tool right here is going to go through and apply that deformation from the source to the Rigify tool. And at this point, once you press the playback button, you can see that you have that both in pose mode and also in objects mode. So if we go all the way back and press the playback button, you can now start seeing those things. Now for these other stuff that are right here, you can also choose to play with the tool a little bit more to see how it works. But then if you want to play more with the Rigify tool, you can find them right here, as you can play with the rig layers. And once you switch over to pose mode, you can select any of them and play with all of the features that that comes with them. So this is about it, and of course I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. If you want to play with the IK FK, you can switch that here. If you want to simply stick with the IK, you can have this for yourself. And of course, if you want to also proceed to add some animations to this, you can go right here, press add on the keyboard, add as much animation as you want to add over to this stuff. And once you're done, you can simply go all the way back and send these over to Unreal Engine. And sending this over to Unreal Engine is pretty neat, as first things you would notice is because we have used the UE to Rigify and we have this right now, you can now notice that we have some extras. We have the armature, and we can simply proceed to bake this right here. So once we bake, it's going to bake all of what we have here into the skeleton, just like you have in Motion Builder, and we can now easily send this over to Unreal Engine. And if you're thinking about textures and stuff, you can always go over to the shader, make sure you know where these textures are, as these ones are the textures that we're working with this. So you need to know where the textures are, and those textures you might want to load them within the material editor. And how you can get this material editor is by double clicking right here, and you'll notice you have the material editor going for you. So what we're going to do now is just to simply load this in so you can see how it works. And if for some reason you cannot find where your textures are, how you can easily locate them, especially if you're getting an FBX file and you don't know where these textures are, you can click right here and say you want to unpack this, and this is going to unpack it to whatever directory that you want it to unpack it to. That way it's going to be easier for you to, you know, find where the textures are, and you can easily go from there and get things going for you. So with our texture here, what I'm going to do is just simply load up Unreal Engine, and because we've already opened the material, I'm going to click and drag this right in here. Normally I would suggest that you create a folder where you're going to have all your materials, and then you can have all of your textures there. So there are two ways you can actually apply this material. You can click drag and drop right here, and then proceed to link your RGB over here, or you can link your RGBA depending on the kind of material you're working with, or you can right click the texture and create material from texture. Now this way, once you do it, you'll be able to create a brand new material from the texture. So let's simply allow that to load, or you can just simply click right here and load this over to this point. If you're done, just simply click on apply and hit save to save this, and you're good to go. You know, by the way, once you update this texture here, it simply updates right there, or you can just simply click this, drag and drop. So either ways, you're going to have your textures running very smooth directly here in Unreal. If you want to work with a sequencer, that is totally fine, or you can just simply go through and press the playback, and you have your animation coming from Blender right here into Unreal Engine. So easy. So this is basically about it. I would like to know what you guys think about these in the comment section. Today we've seen a whole lot of things, like how you can get things started up, to how you can troubleshoot, sending stuff, previewing animations, creating your own retargeting, and also working with a control rig that exists with this new add-on, or this pretty cool add-on the guys at Epic Games has actually made available for everyone. So tell me what you guys think about this in the comment section, and of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.